Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, June the 7th. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith. We've got Game 4, Eastern Conference Final tonight. The Tampa Bay Lightning looking to even up the series against the New York Rangers. A pivotal Game 4. It's the proverbial swing game, I should say, in the series. Either 3-1 Rangers or 2-2. And man, there's a big difference between both of those. So it is a very important Game 4 tonight, and we'll break that down in just a second. We'll also look back at last night as the Colorado Avalanche complete the 4-game sweep over the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, we were on the air during that game last night on the Betcast, and we thank everybody for joining us and for tuning in on the Betcast. We have one more Betcast still to go here in the conference finals, and that will be Thursday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final. And of course, we know there will be one between the Rangers and the Lightning back to Madison Square Garden on Thursday night. Joe Madden, by the way, who I did a podcast with earlier today, will be joining us on the Betcast Thursday night. So that's pretty cool. Good stuff. And also on our daily show, she'll be a guest a week from this Thursday. So June the 16th, she will be on the show with us. So Joe Madden, who loves hockey, bets hockey, is doing actually very well with free picks as well. If you watch her Twitter account these days, doing well. So that's all coming up. So we'll get to the recap of last night. We'll get to, obviously, Game 4 in just a second. But I do want to talk about, for at least a little bit, the big news last night and the firing of Bruce Cassidy as head coach of the Boston Bruins, which took me completely by surprise. I'll tell you what, right away, my first thought was, this guy has made the playoffs every year as head coach of the Boston Bruins. And apparently the reward you get for that is a pink slip. Seriously. I mean, my goodness, you make the playoffs every year under Bruce Cassidy, and your reward for that is you're looking for work somewhere else. I mean, that is just it. To me, this is shocking. This really is. This is almost on that Barry Trotz level when he got canned by the New York Islanders. That, wow, I didn't think they'd go in this direction. Yet when I really stepped back and really looked at things clearly, I'm actually not as shocked he got fired because of the way Boston conducted themselves from the front office in terms of after they got knocked out by Carolina. They didn't say a peep for weeks after getting knocked out. Actually, Neely had one brief press conference, and he was very, very non-committal to anything. And that's the only thing he said after they got eliminated by Carolina. And right away, I'm like, man, this front office is evaluating making serious changes. There's no question about that. And then we didn't hear anything for weeks from Neely, from Don Sweeney, the GM, Cam Neely, the team president. Nothing, of course, from the owner. He usually doesn't say much anyway. Jeremy Jacobs usually lets his president and his GM do the talking. But nevertheless, we heard nothing from anybody for weeks. And I'm like, you know what? This is ominous. This has that feel that they're going to do something. They're going to make a trade, and maybe they're going to fire Cassidy. And I didn't want to believe it because I didn't think this man deserved to be losing his job last night. But sure enough, they went in that direction. And the way they did it, you're dropping the decision at 7 p.m. Eastern time on a Monday night, 1 hour before a Stanley Cup playoff game is about to begin in the conference finals. So the timing was, very odd, very bizarre. I didn't like it. Well, why don't you, if you know you're going to do it earlier in the day, why don't you say at 11 a.m. Eastern in the middle of the day? Why the fuck are you dropping this on everybody an hour before a Stanley Cup playoff game? So, the timing of it wasn't very good. And if you look at all the things that the Boston Bruins need to improve on, and obviously improvement is needed when you get knocked out in the first round and you have aspirations of contending every year, there are so many things up the list on what needs to get better with the Boston Bruins, way ahead of coaching. I mean, that to me is what stands out to me. Is Bruce Cassidy at fault for not having anybody offensively that you can count on game in and game out outside of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak? Is that Bruce Cassidy's fault? We're really going to blame him for that now? Are we really going to blame him for the fact that you didn't insulate this blue line after Chara moved on, after Torrey Krug went to the St. Louis Blues? Are you really going to put that at the feet of Bruce Cassidy now? That's his problem. That's his fault that the blue line didn't have the quality depth that they've had in years past. That maybe you put a little too much stock in Matt Grzelcyk and Brandon Carlo being absolutely, behemoth defensemen, big-time defensemen when clearly they're not ready to play at that level yet. That's Bruce Cassidy's fault. What about getting them some depth? What about getting them some more forwards that I can count on offensively instead of just, Taylor Hall every now and then, and Charlie Coyle once in a blue moon, and Eric Howla will chip in, here and there sporadically. Why didn't the GM, Don Sweeney, and Neely, who I think Don Sweeney and him, it's like the puppet master and the puppet. It's basically, dance, puppet, dance, do what I say. Even if you don't agree with it, we're getting rid of Cassidy. That it is what it is. It's a really bad dynamic here. I didn't think Boston had a dysfunctional front office until last night. Now I know they have a dysfunctional front office, and the way they've conducted this act of firing Bruce Cassidy is absolutely awful, in my opinion, because there's way more issues on this hockey club. You're going to blame Bruce Cassidy all of a sudden for being thrust into a situation where Tuukka Rask suddenly retires, and you've got to rely on an inconsistent Linus Ullmark and a young kid and Jeremy Swayman in net all year. I mean, that we're going to put it on the blame of Bruce Cassidy. We're going to blame him for that now. I mean, it's just one thing after another. I didn't like it. And who, by the way, and this is the worst part of it, who the fuck running a major company or business allows a guy to, let's say you're in an office, you're working on a collaborative team, and you've got assignments that you have to do every day for your boss and complete the work. What if you allow the leader of that team to say, or someone tells the leader of the team, the boss does, you got to get rid of this one guy, or you got to make a change with your staff and get rid of someone and shake things up because our performance level as a team needs to be better. And you allow the leader of the team in the office space to get rid of an assistant or get rid of someone on the team. And then you turn around 2-3 weeks later and you get rid of the team leader and fire him. That's essentially what the Bruins did here. They said to Bruce Cassidy, you got to get rid of one of your assistants here. And Bruce Cassidy did that. Fired his assistant coach. And then Sweeney and Neely turn around and fire Bruce Cassidy a couple of weeks later. Who does that? What kind of business is that? How do you run shit like that if you're the Boston Bruins? You say to Cassidy, you know what? You got to get rid of one of your assistants. You need to shake up your coaching staff a little bit. When you're telling him that, you're basically saying, you know what? You're coming back next year, but you got to make changes. And then they turn around 2 weeks later and they fire Bruce Cassidy. That's an absolute disgrace. I'm sorry. That is. I got to call that out for the way I see it. That's terrible to run your team that way and to treat human beings like that. It's terrible. And then I got to hear this ridiculous crocodile tears quote from Sweeney. This decision was extremely difficult. Don't make the decision then. Don't make the decision if it's that difficult. It wasn't even warranted, for fuck's sakes. You've got more issues with this hockey team than the head coach of the team. It's absolutely awful. Very angry. The more I think about it, you can tell, the more angry I get. Very upset. And Bruce Cassidy is going to be the benefactor of this. Get out of this situation. He's going to be an in-demand head coach. You better believe it. He won't be a free agent for very long. The one thing I will credit the Bruins for is they did it now and didn't wait till the season where, he's got a chance now to look for another job. He's not a lame duck coach because I believe his contract, Bruce Cassidy, was set to expire after next season. So it's a situation where now, guess what? He doesn't have to worry about a lame duck season with what looks like it's going to be a down, declining Boston Bruins team next season. And so that's the one thing they did. They at least allowed him to part ways, let Bruce find a new work somewhere else and a new home. So that's the one good thing about it. But the decision to get rid of him is unfathomable. If you look at Bruins Twitter online, they can't believe it. They're shocked. They're flabbergasted, just like we all are. Like, you think this is the number one problem with the Boston Bruins right now is the head coaching of Bruce Cassidy? I mean, you must be kidding me. You must be shitting me. You must be mental if you really believe that. And unfortunately, the Boston Bruins brass, whether it's Neely, whether it's Sweeney, whether it's the both of them, they believe that somehow. And unfortunately, a good head coach is now looking for work, but he will not be looking for work, in my opinion, for very long. Alex, what did you think of the bombshell last night?
Yeah, like I said, I was stunned just like everybody else. And I mentioned in our little chat on Twitter, I said, what happened? Because the way that this, like I said, the timing and just the overall move in itself lends itself to, is there something else we don't know? Is there something that's going to come out soon? We've seen coaches get moved for different reasons like that over the last couple seasons. the first the move comes without much notice, or like I said, intention, and then all of a sudden something else comes out. So that's the only thing that I could even think about. Like, other than that, it's like this Boston team. We were on here, months ago, and I said this team, especially the way that they exited out of the playoffs last year, I'm like, they may be a team that's on the fringe. They're going to be a wild card team, probably not even make the playoffs. That was my thought. I had the point total under. They turn around, win 51 games, get 107 points. They exceeded expectations, at least in my eyes, and I think probably in a lot of other people's as well. Like I said, despite having the injuries, despite having the shaky goaltending tandem, they still were a quality team in the regular season, and seemed like they could have made some noise in the postseason. So for this move to happen is just really shocking. Like I said, he's a really good coach, brought the team to the playoffs in 6 straight seasons. And for it to happen this way, like you said, there's clearly some dysfunction and some issues in the front office with the Bruins. But like I said, my initial reaction was that, okay, there's got to be something else behind this that we don't know about, because it just didn't make sense at all. And then when you mentioned about how Boston kind of closed out the season, said didn't really mention anything, and kind of was pretty ho hum in their exit interviews and exit press conferences. So it was just very odd. So like I said, he'll land on his feet and get a job somewhere. I'm hoping it'll be the west side of Chicago. I'd love to see him. The Hawks were a team that, not only drafted him way back when, but he also was an assistant there during the dark ages. Obviously, you can't take that with, any kind of super credence, because he's definitely elevated his game as a coach at all levels since, the early and mid 2000s. So, I think that would be a great fit for him personally, but it's just odd. It's just really odd, and like I said, it's not a good look for the Bruins organization, especially when you look at we talked about this last year with Vegas and how they removed the players and the whole Fleury trade. You shun yourself sometimes from potential free agents coming in because they don't want to deal with that same kind of situation. Well, here's Boston. What coaches really want to try to jump into the situation if there's a lot of turmoil and you got injuries, heading into the beginning of next season? They're more than likely going to miss the playoffs in my eyes next year. I think there's going to be a huge shift around in that Atlantic division, and I think they're going to be closer to the bottom than the top next year. So, you're not really doing yourself any favors if you're the Neely and Sweeney to try to build things up for the future the way you're going about business.
By the way, Patrice Bergeron, I don't want to say he's retiring for sure now, but I think he is. It's certainly, as far as I'm concerned, he ain't coming back to Boston. But I think he's probably going to retire. I doubt he's going to play somewhere else. I think then Jimmy seemed to think all along that he's going to be retiring. Jimmy, by the way, is just working his tail off, especially now with this story breaking. And he's had some burnout as well the last few weeks. He's really been pounding the pavement, so to speak. That's why he hasn't been on much lately, and will probably only be on a couple of times more, maybe the rest of the season. But he's just been working his tail off. So shout out to Jimmy Murphy for doing that here. But yeah, definitely he's right in line with us that he was stunned by this and he doesn't agree with it. If you look at anybody on the Bruins Twitter, they're not thrilled at all by this decision. And Bruce Cassidy, you're right. I think with the Blackhawks, it's a good fit. Definitely. Yeah. It would be nice to see them maybe target him as their head coach. We'll see if that is the case, but there's going to be other teams interested. There's a lot of vacancies, Winnipeg, Vegas, other places looking for head coaches as well that are definitely going to be interested in Bruce Cassidy. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And as the coaching carousel definitely is on going into the off season for sure. And, the one good thing for Cassidy is, look, they were going to fire him mid-season next year anyway, because I think they would have gotten off to a bad start. And they start the year with no Brad Marchand, no Matt Grzelcyk, no Charlie McAvoy. They're going to start the year out. And for a significant part of the season, like they're going to miss time. I think all of them are going to miss a month minimum, maybe even 2, to begin the season. So they're already behind the 8 ball. October, November, it's going to be a rough first couple months. And if they had gotten off to a slow start, they probably would have fired him mid-season anyway. And, blame Cassidy, make him the fall guy, like they do everything else, apparently. Let's blame him. So at least now, Alex, firing him now, the one positive about it is that Bruce now has a full off season ahead to evaluate and explore his options and his next home, to allow himself to be interviewed by a bunch of teams for a head coaching spot. And that's the one good thing about this, is it at least puts Bruce in a situation where he's going to be able to find work as early as the start of next season. That's the one good thing about it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the thing. Like I said, and with the many vacancies that are out, and teams obviously going to scramble to get things loaded up. We got drafts coming up and different things. So yeah, he'll definitely find a spot sooner than later. I wouldn't be shocked if it's before the finals end that we hear about him going somewhere, and of course things will be made official after.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what we'll definitely keep you updated on that situation as the weeks unfold. But definitely a stunner last night with the firing for the Boston Bruins of head coach Bruce Cassidy. All right, last night we'll just going to be very brief with the recap of the Avs Oilers game since we did talk about it at the end last night. But really, all you can say is the better team won, right? The better team won, the deeper team won. Who had the better 4 lines of forward depth? Colorado. Who had the much better 6 on defense? Colorado. There's no denying that whatsoever. I mean, you stack up hobbled Darnell Nurse, who's by far the best defenseman the Oilers have, and he wasn't even close to 100%. And I'll get to that in a second. Just the absolute guts and the warrior mentality of both him and Leon Draisaitl. Just absolutely remarkable to play through what they both did. And obviously, when it comes to Colorado, though, they were healthier. Really, they missed Kadri and Gerard. Those were their 2 injuries. But they still have so much depth they can overcome that. I mean, and you look at Taves, Makar, Jack Johnson, Josh Manson, Bowen Byram, and Eric Johnson. That is just such a significantly better and deeper blue line than Edmonton. With a less than 100% Darnell Nurse, with Cody Ceci, who's been bounced around from team to team. Barry and Bouchard are offensive-minded, but defensive liabilities at times. Duncan Keith, best days behind him. You go on and on. Brett Kulak, just a depth defenseman who's okay. That could not compete with Colorado's blue line. Simple as that. It could not compete with Colorado's blue line. That's 6 for Edmonton against Colorado's 6 on the blue line. Not even close. They were in this series. And I can't say enough about Cale Makar. I mean, everyone will talk McKinnon, and he was great too. McDavid, kind of a hit or miss series for him. Draisaitl, incredible that he had, I think, 4 points last night playing on one leg, essentially. You talk about absolute warrior he was. But Cale Makar, if he wasn't already the spectacular defenseman people thought he was going into this series, people now know he is just unbelievable. This guy, unbelievable. 5 points last night, but it's not so much the offense and the skating ability and jumping into the play and great passing ability and a great shot. He's got everything and all the tools offensively. We knew that already. How about the defensive job he did in this series? How about several times McDavid is, coming down the wing, trying to challenge Cale Makar one-on-one, and Makar just swats the puck away from him like you're swatting a fly out of your face. That's what happened throughout this series. His defensive ability, I think, has improved by leaps and bounds, Cale Makar, and it was on full display for everybody here in the Western Conference Final, just how good he was defensively as well. And it was a complete series for him. No question about that. Big ups to Pavel Francouz, who played terrific in the absence of Darcy Kemper, who lost to injury in Game 1. Francouz had to come in. He did finally look a little bit human last night. No question about that. But still, overall for the series, he was very, very good for the Colorado Avalanche, and he outplayed Mike Smith. And Mike Smith, this isn't a Mike Smith issue. Why Edmonton lost this series. Yeah, were there some bad goals? Of course. Yeah, were there some moments where last night, when they made that comeback and took the 5-4 lead, yeah, one of those goals was right through the 5-hole. You'd like to see Mike Smith stop it. But this is just, look, Colorado was better. Simple as that. They were the much deeper team, better team, and they ended up winning that game. And their top players probably played better throughout the large part of that series, in my opinion, compared to Edmonton's. And that was also a huge difference. And again, one last thing about the 2 Warriors for Edmonton. I commend the Oilers for one thing. Even though they probably figured that it's inevitable we're going to lose this series and we might even get swept, they battled till the end. They were down 5-4 and it looked like they had already blown the game, and they came back and somehow they tied it and forced overtime. The guts and the will to keep on competing and trying to fight right till the bitter end was very commendable for Edmonton. And especially for Leon Draisaitl and for Darnell Nurse. Draisaitl last night, that's actually in a losing effort. That's one of the most courageous performances I've seen in a very long time. 4 points and you can barely move on the ice, and you're basically hit multiple times during that game, and we can visibly see it, that he's got to basically just will himself off the ice with all the pain he's going through, limp his way back to the bench. How many camera shots did we see of Leon Draisaitl bent over, sitting on the bench because the pain was just so severe? And here he is going back out on the ice for the next shift and doing everything he can to try to keep his team alive. Unbelievable guts and courage and heart and grit and just, imparable pain tolerance, pain threshold, all that shit. Unbelievable for Draisaitl. And same with Darnell Nurse, my fellow Hamiltonian. I know people are going to bitch and moan, he sucked in this series. He was no good. He had a horrible game too. I get that. Totally agree with that. But how would you play with a fucking torn hip flexor, huh? How? Explain. Hello? How explain? Hello? No, you can't explain. It's an incredible pain. The fact he's even playing and out there on the ice is insane, in my opinion, but incredibly remarkable. And he did everything he could. So definitely I'm looking at a situation here where I just give Nurse and Draisaitl all the credit in the world for playing through the pain and the severe injuries they were dealing with throughout that series. Alex, final thoughts on the Avalanche sweeping their way to the Stanley Cup final?
Yeah, I mean, Colorado finally getting over the hump and finally getting back to the Stanley Cup final, first time since 2001, which is crazy. I remember those days with Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic, and Forsberg and company. And, this team, they've got a lot of the flashes of that as far as the offense goes. I mean, like I said, Cale Makar has become, and it was a great quote by Kevin Bieksa. He says, I don't want to hear everybody calling Makar an offensive defenseman anymore. He's a complete defenseman. And he really showed that in this series, playing a great two-way game for all 4 games and throughout this postseason. And he's emerged as a huge star. I'm thrilled personally because I have a plus 550 ticket for him to win the Conn Smythe. And I know as great as McKinnon's been, but it seems like the game really has tried to push Makar a little bit more. The league itself has kind of pushed him to, they've made him a little bit more noticeable. You hear his name thrown out a lot. So maybe that, lends some credence if they find a way to win this next series. But it just, like I said, hats off to Pablo Francouz for the way he stepped in. And yeah, he looked a little shaky last night, but like you said, it was a full-on effort from Edmonton. It was if you can have an admirable loss, this is definitely it. This is the way you go out. If you're down 3-0 and you end up losing, getting swept, this is the way you want to go out. You don't want to go out in your home crowd and get blown out 7-0 or 8-0. You fight to the end, and that's exactly what they did. And like you said, there should be no slander whatsoever right now on Darnell Nurse's name. The fact that he played all 3 series with a torn hip flexor, that is insane pain. And the fact that, being a defenseman, you're skating longer minutes to the wherewithal of that. It's just an incredible feat for him. But at the same time, it's also what I said last night in the betcast. At some point, you have to realize that your guys, as good as they are and as important they are to your club, if they're not, even 50% healthy or the injury is debilitating them so much to where they're not playing their position the way that they can, you have to bench them. It's simple as that. And I think that was the case with him. And even you said the same for Draisaitl, even though he had 4 assists last night. But those guys getting beat up and banged up at some point, they hurt you more than help you. And I think that's got a lot to do with it. As well as they played with the situations they've dealt with, at some point you have to have fresh bodies in there. That's the reason you have depth players. That's the reason why, and when we talked about how Edmonton had bolstered their depth, they still had McDavid, they still had Hyman. Those guys were chipping in. They should have been able to manage things a little bit better, and maybe you rest those guys, in one of the earlier series, and they'd be a little fresher for this. We're gonna throw out a million what ifs now because they're done, but I just think that's something that teams have to really look at moving forward. We always commend these guys for what they played through during the postseason every year. We see the list of injuries that come out whenever teams get eliminated. At some point in time, you have to realize, hey, like no matter how valuable they are, if they're that hurt, they're not really going to help the team. And then you look long term. Nurse has this gigantic contract. Is he going to be fully healthy and ready for next season? These guys, the things linger on, and then all of a sudden you get off to a slow start the next season. And now you put yourself in a vulnerable situation, all because you guys are getting crushed 4-0 in the last round of the playoffs, and you probably should have rested them knowing that things weren't going to come to a head anyway. So those are questions that they have to ask themselves during the offseason, obviously. But kudos to the Colorado Avalanche. They showed the crowd out in Denver. They're just absolutely rocking and rolling. And it's going to be a fun series, whoever they play out of the East. This is a fun Colorado team to watch. They've been great all year, and they deserve to win the West.
No, absolutely. You know, the one guy that could have, I don't want to say made it. They're not winning the series just because this guy, if he had played better, they still would have lost to Colorado. I'm just saying they maybe avoid the sweep. They win at least a game or two. If he had given them something, anything offensively in this series, and that's Jesse Puljujärvi, helmet head, as I call him. It's just, get that damn helmet on properly.
My overtime pick,
yeah.
Ian.
Yeah.
Remember?
That was definitely taking a shot. That one. Jesse Puljujärvi to score in overtime. Look, he had chances. He did, in a few games in this series. But at the end of the day, they don't, you don't win a series based on scoring chances. You win a series based on putting the puck in the net, putting the biscuit in the basket. And he was just unable to do that. And he was one of those people you count on, other than the usual, especially on a night where you had no Evander Kane and you had no Kyler Yamamoto. And both of those guys were out last night. That was a night where you need something from Jesse Puljujärvi, and didn't give you anything. One shot on goal, no points. In fact, four games in this series, no points, and only 3 shots on goal. That's not good enough. And now you got to evaluate, what are you going to do with him now moving forward? Because obviously he's one of the guys you have to look to step up when you had who you had out last night, Yamamoto and Kane. It can't be all Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, all the time. Hell, Nugent Hopkins even contributed. I've even got to give him credit. He stepped up with a big breakaway goal off a turnover. He tried to help the cause for the Oilers. Got nothing out of Puljujärvi. None, 0. And the whole series, pointless for him in 4 games. So that was big that they didn't get anything from him offensively. Andrew, thoughts on the series?
Well, I mean, there's not much to say. You guys did a great job. I think that, it was a very admirable loss. It's kind of like what Alex said, and you were saying too, Ian. They went out with pride, the Oilers. I think one thing that I'll mention about Colorado is just the fact that they proved that. I mean, who scores the game winner? Was it McKinnon, Makar? Was it Nichushkin, Rantanen, Landeskog, McKinnon? Did I say McKinnon again? No, it wasn't him. I mean, it was Arturi Lehkonen. So I mean, to me, the guy that scored the game-winning goal, that really defines what the whole series was. You guys get with me on that? I mean, Puljujärvi wasn't scoring it. Ian just talked about him. Nugent Hopkins scored 1 yesterday, but in crunch time, you're going to rely on him. There's a handful of people you could rely on for Colorado, and maybe 3 people you could count on for Edmonton, and that was really the difference. Every game, and realistically,
and the discrepancy in the blue line, I thought that was the biggest difference. Yeah,
and of course, big time. And I think back to the Canadians, because I was so excited last year during their run. But I'm not going to bullshit anybody. I mean, Shea Weber, Edmondson, those guys are great defensemen, but having a top goalie in the world, Carey Price, back there, if you're going to be outclassed with the players on the ice, you better have the better goaltender. And obviously with Smith, I mean, I defended him a lot, but there's only so much defending you can do when the guy freaks out. I mean, Ian and I talked about it on the betcast when I jumped on last night. You allow 1 goal and you're still up 1, and he starts losing his mind. Ian I think you saw my tweet. You liked it, Ian, on Twitter. I used that the new meditation logo or emoji. Yeah. Alex, you ever see that? I said Mike Smith needs to meditate. It's like this person with their it's a really funny emoji. I was like, in the off season, if Mike Smith plans to play 1 more year, he should just meditate the whole summer. Because he threw his stick across the ice after 1 goal. Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, I have 2 close friends that were goalies. They said the biggest thing you got to do is keep your cool. Mike Smith is like the exact opposite of that. Like, he just gets so mad. So look, I mean, I was wrong about the plus 2.5. Happy enough to get the 6.5 over and in-game 5.5 over, but going to be interesting to see how much rest Colorado gets and if it's a good or a bad thing for them. But I think I said yesterday on the show, and I'll say it again real quick. Sometimes the favorite that start the season off is the favorite for a reason, and we're seeing that here.
Yeah.
And honestly,
Colorado.
It's a really cool storyline, guys. If I work for a website like it's just media stuff, you can't call it David versus Goliath, but it's kind of like the new generational team looking at if Tampa Bay does, that, they're still down 1, but if Tampa Bay moves on, I just think the headline is cool because every game, and I know it's not going to everyone's going to end up cheering for the team that was the favorite all year to knock off the team that won back-to-back.
Yeah.
It'll be a real, you know what I mean? It's going to be a real,
Yeah.
because like usually you cheer against the favorite, right? But this year it'll be like, nah, everyone's cheering for the favorite to knock off the back-to-back champions. So I think it's good to see that to stuff. Like it's kind of like with the Warriors, like when LeBron went back to Cleveland, a lot of people love to cheer against LeBron, but even in that matchup, people were cheering for the Cavs to knock off the Warriors just because it was like, you know, let's have somebody else win.
Yeah, exactly. Just sick of Golden State, like maybe some people are sick of Tampa now after two back-to-back Stanley Cups. Although they really haven't won a true, I don't want to say a true Stanley Cup, but like a regular 82-game season, back to the old schedule format, you know, schedule alignment like it is this year, where the Atlantic Division.
Oh no, Ian's calling them Mickey Mouse championships.
I was about to say, and you know what? No, it's funny you mentioned that because I thought about that the other day, and I'm like, man.
I'm not taking any shine off their two championships,
right.
but
people
this
are
is
going to say that
regular, you know, standardized NHL season start to finish for them during this run. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, but they earned it. No, they earned the last two, and what they did was a hell of an accomplishment. There's no question.
Yeah.
But now they're doing it with the way the NHL is supposed to be every year. 82 games. You're in your divisions you're supposed to be. You're playing who you're supposed to be throughout the regular season. So it's just, and now you're playing legit, true home games, true road games. You know, no neutral environments. You know, no division alignment changes, no bubbles, nothing like that. It's real. Right now, that's why if Tampa Bay wins it this year, if they come back, beat the Rangers, and then beat Colorado, then it's truly spectacular, and they cement 100% everything they've done the last 3 years. Yeah,
if they come back from where they are right now to win, it's the greatest three-peat in sports history. Plain and simple.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you can no longer. And I'm not even taking. I don't even like trying to take it away from what they've done the last 2 years, which is a great accomplishment. No. And the only thing I'm pointing out is that it's a full, regular, normalized NHL season this year.
Where does Puljujärvi play next year, guys?
Yeah, that's going to end up being a good question. But I tell you what, his value takes a hit. You know, with the way that playoff performance went for him. I mean, that was. Conspicuously absent for a good part of it. But, you know, that's an interesting question because you know how for sure it ain't going to be in Edmonton again. That's for sure. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up going in the offseason, especially when you think of the Oilers cap situation, you know, which I'm going to take a look at right now. You know, they've got some big-time decisions to make going into next year, and it'll be interesting to see how it ends up playing out and transpiring for them. For sure, because, you know, you're going to have contracts for Draisaitl in a few years, McDavid in, you know, 4 years. You know, those are things you're going to have to consider. Hyman's obviously locked up long term. The Nuge is locked up long term. Evander Kane, you're not going to be able to sign him, we assume, in the offseason.
Oh, you don't think he's back in Edmonton, eh?
Yeah, it's going to. It depends on how much he enjoys it there, how much he likes the fit there with the team, and it was a great fit.
I feel like he wants to be on a good team, though. I mean, obviously, the guy needs.
I feel
money.
He wants to get paid because of all the shit that's gone on with him.
The guy needs money for sure, but
right.
I mean, just ask Matthew Tkachuk. But I also don't think he wants to play for a bottom feeder either.
No, I don't.
Who did he play for? Wasn't it Buffalo? He played for
San Jose,
Buffalo, right?
San Jose when they were
Buffalo
and Buffalo. Yeah, so he played for two. He hasn't really. This is the first time he's played on a good team, isn't it? I mean, San Jose was okay when he was there, but. Yeah, it's always an interesting situation.
His whole career, he's been with bad teams. I mean, he started with Atlanta, so
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like for a guy that needs money, but he also like I'm sure he loved playing with like Leon and Connor. I'm sure that was a fun experience for him.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm sure he loved it, and it was a great fit. That's the thing. It was truly a great fit. How much does great fit a team that got, you know, close conference finals and staying there in a good situation supersede the big money contract that you're likely going to get from someone? You know, I think he wants the money, to be honest. That's just me. Just from the outside, I think he's going after the money, regardless of where it is.
And then, of course, there's outside factors with his personal life that kind of jump into this situation as well. And him being in Alberta, there was a whole thing that went on. You know, you can read about that on Google. But so we could see him go somewhere else. I don't know, but yeah, it obviously it was a good fit for him. I'd like to see him stay there. Honestly, I think the chemistry that he had with McDavid and those guys was really good. And we talk about the depth that they need, and if they can structure his contract in some sort of way where they can still stay within the cap, but he gets paid, then it might be a good fit. But I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts with Evander Kane, obviously.
It'll be interesting to see in the offseason what's going to happen with him and where he's going to end up next season, no question. I know where I'm going to end up tonight. That's in front of my television set watching Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final. That's a good segue right there. New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning. Series with the Rangers ahead 2-1. Tampa Bay -175, home favorites. 5.5, still the total. I mean, not a shock. I mean, every game in this series has been 5.5. The only game to go over the total was Game 1, which is the over that I really liked, figuring that it would be a little bit more, bad defense and sloppy play, especially for Tampa, given the long layoff. That was the one that went over. The last 2 games have stayed under the total. Game 2 barely, and you could even say Game 3 barely, but they got there. That's all that mattered in the end. So we'll see how this one plays out tonight. A lot of people will think, Tampa Bay at home tonight, they're going to tie this series up. Home team has won every game so far in this series, and that's been a trend with Rangers games in particular, going back to the last round, other than Game 7 where they won in Carolina. I agree with that to a certain degree, and Tampa Bay got their game going in Game 3. There's no denying that. 52 shots on goal. It was dominance at 5-on-5, which we talked about in the recap yesterday. They earned that win Sunday afternoon. They were the better team at 5-on-5, and if not for Igor Shesterkin, it would have been probably a lot. It would have been 4-5-6-2 as opposed to 3-2. But Shesterkin was incredible. Once again, gave the Rangers a chance when they really didn't get much at 5-on-5 in terms of even strength. So there is that belief out there. Tampa's got their feet wet now, their feet under them. They got the win. It was their best game. They're starting to figure things out, against this New York Rangers team. And all of that could be very true. But we are coming back to tonight with Tampa again in that same price range, -175. And you think of all that went right for Tampa Bay and how well they played for 60 minutes, especially, as I mentioned, at 5-on-5. And you think to yourself, okay, they dominated the game, but what ended up happening? Life and death to escape with a victory. And they needed Andre Palat's goal with 40 seconds left to get the go-ahead goal to make that 3-2 win stand up. I mean, it was still not easy. Even though territorially and shot-wise and high-danger chances and the expected goals margin was heavily in Tampa's favor in Game 3, I understand all that, but that's all washed away because of Igor Shesterkin and how he can just keep his team in a game, and we saw that, obviously, in Game 3. So my question is, how much better can Tampa Bay play than they did in Game 3? And in Game 3, they barely escaped, 3-2, and needed a last-minute goal in the third period to win that game. How much better can they play? And how much better can the New York Rangers play? And the New York Rangers have the much bigger room for improvement, in my opinion, going into Game 4 tonight. Their 5-on-5 play wasn't good in Game 3, obviously. They got dominated there. But the one thing that is still going well for the Rangers is their power play. Continues to produce, continues to find ways to contribute offensively. And the one thing Tampa Bay's still doing is taking penalties. And Corey Perry, that was a terrible penalty to take. You can't be slashing the goalie. I understand you want to be rattling his cage, frustrating him a little bit, trying to get under his skin, trying to get him, off his game and not perform as well. But you can't be taking those kind of penalties and giving this red-hot Ranger power play the opportunities. And the Ranger power play almost buried Tampa Bay early in that game because, remember, it was 2-0 Rangers in Game 3 with 2 power play goals, before Tampa Bay mounted their comeback to win 3-2. And this Ranger power play, you go back now to Game, I think 3. Yes, Game 3 of the Carolina series. It's been a phenomenal power play. They have scored in all but one game, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10 power play goals for the New York Rangers in their last 27 opportunities. 10 for 27 with the power play for the New York Rangers. So it is really humming along right now. And the concern is Tampa, again, with the penalties. They've actually been one of the top teams in the playoffs, guys. Tampa Bay, in terms of the penalties, number of penalties they've taken. That does bother me a little bit going into this. As you can tell, if you haven't already been able to tell, I'm kind of leaning to the dog tonight. I am. at plus 155 in this game. I just think when I sit back and I look at the scope of the series so far, I see Tampa Bay basically being given, more than a 60% chance to basically, if you're going to lay $1.75, it's telling you that they think Tampa Bay's got like a 60% or greater chance to win this game. I don't know if it's that high of a percentage with the way the Rangers power play is working. Tampa Bay is taking penalties. We've got a goaltending matchup where Shesterkin is certainly the equal of Vasilevsky, the way he's played this series. I don't know if I'm willing to say, hey, minus 175 better than the Rangers tonight are this Tampa Bay Lightning team. I'm certainly not willing to say that. So for me, it will be a modest bet on the Rangers at plus 155 tonight in this one. Total, I'm staying out of it because I still think these goalies are too good. You could get maybe a little flurry of goals. You could get a little, penalty parade like you saw in Game 3. And what ended up happening? The game still stayed under, because it's just that's how good these two goaltenders are, especially Shesterkin, who's been just out of this world good. So the total, I don't have a strong thought on. From a prop standpoint, that's really where my focus is tonight. It's going to be some player props. There's a bunch of shots on goal that I'm interested in as far as this game goes tonight. I'm looking at definitely from a Tampa standpoint, Kucherov starting to get it going. Andre Palat has been a machine scoring goals at home, points at home. Look at that, I think, as far as Lightning props are concerned. I think Perry eventually, as long as he stays out of the damn box, trash the net, but do it by staying out of the box. He's going to find a way maybe to put one in the net at some point. So Corey Perry is probably a prop I'm interested in. For the Rangers, look, I thought in Tampa that Zibanejad and Kreider were going to get shut down. So let's look at Lafreniere and Hedl, and let's look at some other players for Rangers props. But sure enough, who got the 2 goals for them in Game 3? Yeah, Zibanejad and Kreider. So much for that crackpot theory for me going into Game 3. Thinking that the top players would get shut down with the last line change. It would be tougher for Zibanejad and Kreider, but they're the only guys that scored for the Rangers in Game 3. So I wouldn't talk anyone out as Zibanejad, Kreider props, but I'm going to try to go back to the well one more time with Lafreniere and Hedl in particular on that kid line, but definitely give Zibanejad and Kreider credit. It seems like home or away, they're making an impact right now for the Rangers. So it's definitely what I'm looking at in terms of player props for this game tonight. Alex, we'll start with you. Game 4, Rangers Lightning.
Yeah, the way I'm approaching this from a betting standpoint is pretty much like I did Game 3. I'm on Tampa Bay first period puck line, laying the half a goal plus 155. They were lucky to get away with not having the pace controlled in the first period last game. Like I said, it was a back and forth dogfight, and the Rangers had a lead, and the penalties were obviously the narrative of the story in that game. You can't take dumb penalties. Both teams have to be more disciplined moving forward in this series. It's as simple as that. Like I said, the Rangers power play has been electric. The Lightning, can score at will when they get on the power play. We've seen them, I think, 3 times this postseason. We've seen them score like within the first 30 seconds of a power play. So you have to stay out of the box. That's imperative for both teams. But Tampa's got to come out guns blazing in this first period. They got to take that momentum from that last second of the last 5 minutes of that third period, and they got to play that same way the first 5 minutes of this first period tonight. So that's what lends to that. With that being said, if it is a close, first period, they could still cash it. It could still be 2-1 Tampa after 20 minutes. And I probably will look to do what I did in Game 3. I took the Rangers plus 150 live, and actually played it draw no bet. So if that goal doesn't go in with 17 seconds left, I come out of there unscathed, and it goes into overtime. I could rebet it or do something else. So from a strategy standpoint, I was probably with how things turned out. At least getting those good prices live, and didn't cash it in, of course. But that's the way I'm going to attack this here. If I see Tampa, without energy in that first period, or even if they, like I said, come out with the 1-0 lead or a 2-1 lead, but the Rangers are still fighting back, battling hard, I'll look to try to get a Rangers live and maybe even the under live. Like I said, get a couple of goals and you see a 6.5 or 7, that these teams are going to make adjustments in the second and third periods. They're going to try to slow things down. So I wouldn't mind laying $1.50 to get 6.5 if I see where, okay, even though it's a 1-0 game, we know things are gonna screech to a halt, and we're not gonna see 7 goals total the rest of that way. So this is definitely more of a live game for me, but I already am on Tampa first period puck line. If they want to win this game, they have to come out red hot, I think, in the first 10-15 minutes of that first period.
Yeah, first period puck line here, -0.5 plus at a nice plus price. Probably around the same price it was. I remember taking it in game
I got
3.
155.
Yeah.
160. I had 160 in game 3, but
Yep.
today was 155.
Yeah, so around that same price range, -0.5 plus 155. I don't hate that. Actually, I think if you like Tampa, the first period's a better place to focus is early in that game. Yeah, shots on goal, a lot of good chat, and that's what I like about the chat. They always, they're passing around ideas and thoughts and what they're looking at betting. And I think from a shots on goal standpoint, because I think in the playoffs, especially in a game like this with 2 elite goalies, you want to back up your player prop opinions on the goal score and the points market with the shots on goals as well, just in case, these goalies are just, standing on their head, because you don't want to lose your goal score prop, your points prop, then say, oh man, if I had taken the shots on goal, at least it would have won, because you are going to get both goalies, that are outstanding right now. So I think Stamkos, Kucherov, Palat for me. Those are 3 guys for shots on goal, I think, for Tampa stand out to me. For the New York Rangers, Zibanejad's firing the puck a lot. Consider that as well in terms of shots on goal. And I think even with Hedl, with his confidence, you can get an undervalued maybe look toward his shots on goal props, depending on whether the books, all books post them. But those are definitely what I'd be looking at in terms of shots on goal. Again, though, too, with the going into this game, it's important to point out with the Rangers why I think there's value in the price. That's what I'm betting here more than anything, the price. I just think plus 155 is a lot to be giving the New York Rangers at the moment with what we're seeing transpire here in this series. And when you look at it, as far as the Tampa Bay Lightning are concerned, their even strength goal production has really quieted, the last several games, especially in this series. A lot of their production as well, outside of the game-winning goal in game 3, came on the power play, as well. So, you've got some legit concerns at times with Tampa Bay's 5-on-5 even strength offense, which, again, in terms of chances and expected goals, it was there in game 3, but ultimately goals in the back of the net, it wasn't there until that Palat goal in the final minutes. So I just think this game and this whole series is just a little bit closer than giving the Rangers plus 155. At least to me it is. What do you think, Andrew? Game 4, New York, Tampa Bay.
You know what? It's hard for me it's hard for me not to look towards the under. I don't know if I could look anywhere else. In a game like last game that was penalty filled with so many power play opportunities, both teams capitalizing, but even more chances than what we saw in 2-on-1s. I could even argue that the later part of that game was, some goals that were hard to stop, but still those goalies want to have back. And that's what's crazy about these goalies is that they make, really, really, really difficult saves look average for them, and I really think the under 5.5, even though it's been the story, it's been kind of the cliche pick. I feel like it is for a reason. So it's hard for me not to look at that. I do agree that, I think that it's interesting because you look at the first team to score wager, and sometimes you can actually get a better deal on that than actually the money line. So if you're not a regulation guy and you like Tampa Bay, you could bet that. But I share the same thoughts as Alex, where if you like Tampa, I think you want to go first period because, like I've been saying, with these goalies, a 1-goal lead is like having a 2 or 3 goal lead with how strong they are between the pipes. So that's the only place I'm looking right now. But I will say this: 52 shots on goal last game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's hard not to ride the Igor Shesterkin save prop trend. I looked at Vasilevsky's a couple games ago, but I thought to myself, you know what? Tampa's at home. They're getting the matchups they want. And I think, just like you said, Ian, it's, Corey Perry and company being a little bit dumb, taking those penalties like goalie interference. And then, of course, New York got called for one against Vasilevsky as well. But, I think that the whole point being is they're trying to fire from everywhere possible, which bodes well for shots on goal props, but also bodes well just for the save props for Igor Shesterkin. So that's where I'm looking for right now. If I do anything in game, I'll tweet it out from my Twitter account, but it's hard for me to look anywhere but the under right now.
All right, liking the under. I wouldn't say no to anybody looking to bet Igor Shesterkin over saves. I loved it in game 3. I did take it in game 3. And it was about as easy as it, because I really knew in game 3 they've got to fire from everywhere. Tampa Bay, that they, not that they're not desperate tonight, they still are. They don't want to go down 3-1. It's bad news if they go down 3-1, but it was obviously catastrophic for them if they went down 3-0 on Sunday afternoon after game 3. And I figured they're throwing everything at the net against Shesterkin, and I really love the Shesterkin over saves in Game 3 on Sunday afternoon. I certainly might still look in that direction tonight as well in Game 4, that you'll see a lot of rubber. And again, it's probably going to be in that 31.5 range, I would assume. Might even have been bumped up a little bit following that game, but definitely Igor Shesterkin over saves in theory makes sense, and you would expect him to be a busy goaltender once. Yeah, it's up to 32.5, so they did bump it up by one. 32.5. It was 31.5 in Game 3. So Igor Shesterkin over saves, like I say, no argument there. Yeah, exactly. 52 will get the job done easily. If he ends up, 40, will get there.
And you know what's crazy, guys? 52 shots, a lot of shots, but you still could have looked at a couple guys and lost on your shots on goal props.
Yeah,
that's what's kind of bonkers. You could have taken a few guys over 3.5 shots, and if you look at the list, a couple of key guys landed on 3.
Yeah.
So and you know what's cool too? A lot of books actually will offer a prop called just team shots. So if you don't want to look at the goalie saves, you can look at just the team shots all together. Say, screw one player. I'm just going to take all these guys together for how many shots they get.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is good. And that's what Ray Bryce, again, with another freaking parlay winner last night with the goal score parlays. He had one on the BetCast last Tuesday. With Rantanen and with Kane in the Colorado-Edmonton game. Crazy prices as well. Just obviously he knows what to do in terms of live betting. My gosh, a couple of big payouts there. Actually, he might be on the BetCast Thursday night. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Joe Madden will be as well. So it's going to be a fun BetCast on Thursday night, and we will be there, not for tonight. Tonight we're off, but we will be there for Game 5 Thursday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time with the Game 5 BetCast for Lightning Rangers when the scene shifts back to Madison Square Garden, and the series that will either be 2-2 tied up, or it'll be the Tampa Bay Lightning and this great run of theirs facing elimination Thursday night. So we'll see what it ends up being, but definitely a pivotal swing game here in the Eastern Conference Final taking place tonight. Definitely looking forward to that. All right, great stuff. And I like what Cheshire Cat's saying in the chat. I have no argument about that, because you think if one of them cashes, you make money. Tampa to win by exactly 1 goal, New York to win by exactly 1 goal. And you can get a plus, a great plus price on both of them. One of them hits, you're in profit. So I like that. That's, sometimes you have to strategize at playoff time, this deep into the playoffs. It's tougher. Teams are tight, lines are tight. So props and doing things a little bit differently, you got to look at it. And I don't mind the philosophy there. 1 goal margin victory for either team, and you're profitable.
And honestly, this time of year, we haven't seen nearly as many overtimes this postseason like we have in the past. But if you like the draw tonight, I know some people mentioned that in the chat, play a half unit on the draw and then put a quarter unit on each team to win by 1, and you smooth sailing once the game goes OT. So.
Yeah, no doubt. You could go 3-0 or 2-0, I should say, instead.
Yeah,
really
2-1, but you're gonna get at least a full unit back if either one hits. So.
Exactly, because you'll get the draw and you'll get one of those teams winning by exactly 1 goal. There's your 2-1, and there's your big profit. Yeah. You're right.
I forgot to mention, actually, one prop I talked about earlier today was Zibanejad over 0.5 power play points, which at DraftKings was plus 155. And both teams obviously scored on the power play. But, I mean, the Rangers, this is the thing. I've given the Rangers all the credit in the world. I've all the people are calling me a hater of the team this playoffs. I've given them respect. I've eaten my words. But I will say this. That game, albeit was a comeback game for Tampa, anyone that follows hockey knows that 5-on-5, it was a much closer game than Tampa being down 2-0. Corey Perry runs a goaltender and knocks him over. The Academy Award winner goes to Igor Shesterkin, and all of a sudden it's 1-0 New York. I mean, 5-on-5, Tampa Bay played very well, but I tip my hat to New York's power play because what an absolute rocket Zibanejad has. It's a cannon, and it's plus.
And that wasn't his first. He's had a bunch of those lately. Yeah.
So plus 155 for him to get a point on the power play. Not a bad play.
Well, especially when you look at the fact now, by the way, just scoring a goal, he has scored a goal in 7 of the last 8 games for the New York Rangers. 7 of the last 8 games, he has scored a goal for the Rangers. And of those 7 goals, I'm counting in the last 8 games for Mika Zibanejad. I'm counting them up right now. 4 of them have been on, 5 of them 5 of the 7 goals have been on the power play, which means don't just bet me if Mika Zibanejad to score a goal anytime tonight. Maybe look at that power play point or power play. Well, you don't get power play goal props, but
Right.
power play point prop right there. 5 of his 7 goals that he scored in the last 8 games have been on the power play. So there you go. It tells you that with the man advantage, he's got it going at the moment for the Mika Magic Zibanejad, as Cheshire Cat says. That is true. He's got the Magics going right now. No doubt about it for the New York Rangers. And a great DJ apparently in Ottawa in his playing days, from what I've heard. DJ Z-Bands. He's playing great music right now for the New York Rangers. Music to the ears of Rangers fans. That shot of his finding the back of the net, that's for sure, repeatedly, as he has here in the playoffs. All right, great stuff. Thanks to everyone for joining us in the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it on the way out. And before we wrap it up, we'll do best bets in just a second. A reminder, DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers bet just $1 on any NHL team. Get $150 in free bets if they win. If DraftKings Sportsbook isn't available in your state, you can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy hockey contests. DraftKings giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings app, sign up for an account, use the promo code THPN. Bet just $1 on any NHL team. Get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Must be 21 years of age or older. Must reside in a DraftKings Sportsbook state or province. I should be throwing that in now when I do this. Province, because it is in Ontario now. DraftKings, which anybody that watches Canadian television knows that a million times.
Are the promos the same, Ian? Though, is that
Yep.
they carry over? Okay.
Yeah. So it must reside in a DraftKings Sportsbook state or province. Again, new customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Download the DraftKings app. Sign up for an account. Use the promo code THPN. All right, best bets to wrap it up for this Tuesday edition of the show. Game 4, Eastern Conference Final. Alex, what do you like for best bet?
Yeah, going with Tampa Bay on the first period puck line. So laying a half a goal at plus 155. Like I said, Tampa's got to come out hot. They got to keep that momentum rolling from the way they won Game 3 into Game 4. You cannot let the Rangers dictate the pace in your home barn and possibly leave out of there with a 3-1 series lead going back to MSG. So if Tampa's going to win this game, they got to come out red hot in the first 20 minutes, and I think we'll see them at least have a lead heading into the second period. So I'm going with the Tampa Bay Lightning on the first period puck line plus 155 is my best bet.
All right, Tampa Bay Lightning -0.5 plus 155 first period for Alex B. Smith, his best bet. All right, Andrew, best bet.
I'm riding the under. I'm going to continue with this under here. I think that we saw kind of the game open up. A lot of it was due to power plays and stuff like that, 2-on-1s and things like that. But even though we've already seen a defensive series, I expect it to be even more defensive today. Wouldn't shock me to see a 2-1 finish to this game here tonight. Give me under 5.5.
All right, there it is. Tampa Bay, New York Rangers under 5.5, around -130 for Andrew with his best bet. My best bet is for this game tonight. I think I'm going to go player prop. I like the Rangers, but it's a modest opinion at the plus 155. So I'm going to end up going with a player prop. And look, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go with Zibanejad, and that power play point is just better value. I think if there's a really good chance of him scoring, it's going to be with the power play. 5 of his last 7 have come with the man advantage. Got a power play goal, obviously, in Game 3. And again, it's a nice plus 155 price you're getting with him to get a power play point. So I like that one. Great value. It makes sense. 5 of his last 7 have been with the man advantage. Mika Zibanejad to get a power play point plus 155 for my best bet. Very frustrating to not get Comfer home last night because Colorado with a bunch of goals, and he didn't factor in on any of them from a point perspective. Yeah. But it goes that way sometimes. It is what it is. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. We will have a show tomorrow because we already had a guest book tomorrow. So it'll be one of those short shows, even though there's no game tomorrow. It'll be just talk to the guest, shoot the shit about their hockey past, and talk a little about the conference finals. It'll be a nice and quick show tomorrow on the Ice Guys. So looking forward to that. And then, of course, Thursday, we've got our double shift of shows with Nate Rapensky's our guest on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll also have the Betcast Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Send me a DM if you want to join us. We'll have a good group coming up on Thursday night. Looking forward to that. Game 5 Betcast with the Rangers hosting the Lightning. All right, great stuff. For Alex B. Smith, for Andrew McInnis, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final, and good luck with all your wagers. We'll see you again tomorrow on Wednesday for another edition of the Ice Guys presented by the Hockey Podcast Network.